I cruise down the street like a free rider.
Hi, this is Julian with Fluid Free Ride, and I wanted to give you a quick introduction into the NAMI Burn E. You're going to receive it in the mail relatively shortly, and there's a few things I wanted to point out for you with regards to setup, operation, and safety. And maybe up front, and we're going to touch a little more on that later, this is not a toy. It's a 60-mile-an-hour performance scooter, I would say pretty powerful machine. Treat it like you would your Ducati motorcycle, which means always wear a helmet, always wear gloves, wear closed shoes, start very, very slowly, because it really isn't a toy, and we want to have a lot of fun on it, but we want to be safe. A few safety tips coming later. But first we're coming to setup. Now you're going to receive this in a very, very large box, and it's an extra thick carton box. We try to eliminate styrofoam, and so far our shipping tests work quite well. What you're going to see is the box is going to look relatively beat up on the outside, but you know, trust that inside everything should be nice and secure. So inside your box, you're going to find two chargers. They are large chargers, 72 volts, and I think they're 4 ampere. So if you use both of them, you're actually going to be able to charge your scooter relatively quickly. You can even charge it faster if you get one of the optional 72 volt fast chargers that we're offering. One word on the carbon fiber stem. Now, it looks absolutely beautiful, and as you know, very expensive mountain bikes and road bikes are made out of carbon fiber. It's a very, very durable material, but the material has one problem. If you expose it to major shocks, like for instance, stones kicked up from the road while you're riding fast, and mountain bikes and road bikes have the same problem, it can crack and it can damage, which then impacts the stability of the stem. So, what we'd like you to do is, once you take this out of the box and you have this set up, is, go around and enjoy the beautiful pattern of the carbon fiber, but also at the same time have a close look and see if there's any potential damages or cracks, if there's some imperfection in the material. It should actually look all perfect, but shipping damage can happen, so you never know. We've delivered many of these in Europe already, and everything was always good, but better safe than sorry, so please have a look, and if you find something that looks funny, let us know. Now, once you've taken your scooter out of the box, you will notice that the handlebar is not yet attached, the light is a little sideways and it's still very loose, plus a few of the items on the handlebar, like the display, they're still loose. Now, here I quickly want to show you how to best attach the handlebar, and please pay close attention because we don't want to break anything. So first off, you're going to need the 5mm and the 4mm Allen key from the included tool set. First, the 5mm one, we want to remove the top cap right here. That's not very much tightened, and the only function this has is to close the top of the stem here and to prevent the handlebar from moving up. Once that is removed, we want to take the handlebar backwards like this and slide it over here, and with your 4mm Allen key, you want to make sure these are loose. They should be loose out of the box. You just slide this over loosely like this. Don't push it down too far. Take back the top cap and tighten the top cap right here. And it doesn't have to be very tight because this doesn't have much of a function other than closing this. And then you can slide the handlebar stem upwards so it sits under the top cap. Second thing you want to do is ensure that the handlebar is nicely perpendicularly aligned to the front wheel. This is just visual inspection should do it. And then you want to take the 4mm Allen key and you want to tighten these bolts right here. Now, here's the tricky part, because this is a carbon fiber stem. It's a very durable material, but it's hollow inside, of course, and we don't want to, and there's some stability mechanism inside still, but we don't want to over tighten it here because we don't want anything to break. So ideally, you use a torque wrench and you torque it to 5 Newton meters. Now, not everybody has one, and that's why I will try to give you an idea of how tight I think you should make it just by doing this. And again, plus minus a little, it's not going to make a big difference, but you don't want to do it twice as tight as I'm doing it now, right? You just push it upwards without much force, keep a little more, and you see it's getting kind of harder to push. You give it a little more torque right here, and that pretty much already makes this relatively stable. Let's see where we are right here. You see how I'm kind of pushing up, and give it a little more, and that's pretty much it. Now, look, I mean, if I wanted to turn this, I could probably turn this like twice around, but then it would obviously be way too much. And the same thing we want to do on the bottom one right here, where you know, kind of push it down a little more until, you know, with a finger or so, can't really do it much more. And like that, you know, you feel this, you can move it back and forth, left and right, nothing wobbles, everything seems to be good. Now, that should be roughly around 5 Newton meters. Now, afterwards, what you want to do is make sure that all your dashboards and the display is properly tightened on the handlebar. You see this is still a little loose, and it needs to be for transport, so you want to bring it into the right position and tighten it from the front. Same thing with these guys right here and the brakes. Just put them in a position where they feel most comfortable. And last but not least, you want to move around the headlight, organize it here in between your cables a little bit so it sits nice in the center, and then you also tighten it here. Don't over tighten it less than you tighten this one, just because there's no pressure on this and it doesn't really need to sit that tightly. And afterwards, you may want to like put your cables here a little together. I think they should be perfectly cleaned out in the box, but just in case, you can always tighten them on either side in order to give it a nice and clean look. And with that, the handlebar is attached. Now that you have your scooter out of the box and it's set up, I quickly wanted to introduce you to the folding mechanism. And if I may ask you to come over a little closer. This is a customary designed cone-shaped metal piece, I would say, and this enables the folding mechanism to sit tight and actually pull itself tight as we put it together. So you see what happens here. I'm going to hold this so it doesn't fall down. First of all, you move the stem upwards, and then the stem itself moves downwards onto the cone until you can't move it anymore. And then you can just easily turn this all the way around until it sits right here. And then you just want to ensure this sits tight. You see, I'm just pushing this slightly with my thumb with a little bit of pressure. Sits very well, can't move, can't turn anymore. And then obviously in turn, you know, in order to open this up, you want to unscrew this. And then because the stem sits low on the joint, you want to put a foot on the scooter, and you just want to pull up the stem, and then you can fold it down. Now, you can't pick this up by the stem, right? So the way you want to pick it up is ideally holding it this way, and you want to be careful because it is very heavy, but you can do it. So this is how you can lift it in your truck or car, but don't pick it up by the stem. Quick word on the suspension. It's a pretty advanced suspension that was sourced from the mountain bike industry. And the suspension has 2 types of adjustment. Number 1, the rebound adjustment, and number 2, the preload. First, we'll talk a little bit about the rebound adjustment. That one is actually relatively easy to do, and you can do it with your hands, and you can set it to fast, or you can set it to slow. We've already set it up to fast, and I'll demonstrate to you what that means. It makes the scooter very bouncy, right? So you see how it's like pushing me back up. And this is a setting that you want to use for riding off-road, where you need the scooter to jump back relatively quickly from gaps and holes it drives into. Probably I would not set it as far to the extreme as we've done it right here. I'd probably keep it somewhere in the middle. But if you want to go off-road, you want to have it on the faster and more bouncy side. Now come over here, we'll show you how you can adjust it back to slow. So we had previously set this up and turned this all the way to F. Now we're going to put this to slow. And what this does, it basically regulates the hydraulic flow inside the cylinder in the spring. And when we set this to slow, there's slower oil displacement, and that means it feels much more dampened. And I'm going to show you how that feels. You can go back there. I'm just doing the adjustment on the front as well. All the way back to slow. And then you can see the difference, how it's not jumping anymore. It basically eats up the shocks in the road. And I would recommend an adjustment like this for on-road riding to have more stability. You just think about it. You go along with 35 miles an hour and you hit something. You don't want the scooter to like shoot you back up. You actually just want the scooter to eat up the bumps and keep you very stable and close to the ground. So initially, for your first riding, I would highly recommend you set this to slow, at least close to slow, and then as you get more comfortable and so on, you can experiment with it a little more. All right, the second adjustment you can do on these shocks is the preload adjustment. So just think about it, you have a spring like this, and you know, it's held on top and it's held on the bottom. And if the spring is all the way extended, it can travel far once you hit bumps on the road, right? And the preload, what it does, it actually compresses the spring. It preloads the spring, so you have more tension. So the heavier you are, the more preload you want on these. The scooter is set up out of the box for riders like me, I would say 180 pounds or less. If you're significantly heavier, and this doesn't have to happen for your first ride at all, right? But if you're significantly heavier over time, and especially if you want to ride it very aggressively, you're going to want to adjust the preload. Now, we're working on a tool so you can do this at home, tool and tutorial. In the meantime, if you can't wait, you can bring this to any high-end bike shop and they will be able to deal with these shocks because, as I said, they're from the mountain bike industry, they know how they work, and they're going to be able to set them up perfectly for you. All right, after we talked about setup, I want to talk about the operation of the scooter. And again, you may think of, I know all this and I'll try it out and that's fine. But in case, you know, I've ridden this scooter for a while and I'll quickly introduce you to the most important controls. So number one on the right side, and this is actually something that you may want to change. On the right side, you have lighting and you have indicators and the honk, pretty straightforward. Now, what you'll notice when your thumb is on the throttle, it's not that convenient to basically go and operate this, this dashboard right here. So you may want to consider to potentially move this to the other side, move this in, so you have lighting, indicator, and the honk available on your left thumb that you don't use for the right-hand side. But again, you can obviously start riding it like this. I've never changed it. It works quite well, but I also don't ride all too much in traffic. Now, the throttle obviously speaks for itself, but one tip, and I think that's going to help you a lot, is instead of riding it, and I'm pressing the brake to demonstrate, right? Instead of riding it like this, where your thumb is basically out in the open, and when you hit bumps and shocks, your thumb is moving around, and it can actually make this a little more jittery than it should be, I would highly recommend you place your thumb right here, because that enables you to really nicely, with this part of your thumb right here, not even on the pedal, but actually on the little arm here, move the thumb forward. So like this, and you know, we're indoors, but I'm going to show you how this works. And I'm in full power mode, right? You can kind of move this, you see? You can kind of move this, and you get a little bit of power, and a little more, and that's it. Whereas if you have it here, it's much more difficult to hit. Now on the left side, power, mode, plus and minus. Now I'm going to refrain to go through all these display functions because it is a relatively complicated display. But in the end, I want to just briefly explain the structure of the display to you, and the rest you can find in the manual. So if you hit the mode button twice, you can actually get into the advanced settings. There you go. In here, I can decide P1, P2, P3, P4. You're used to this from your regular scooter. P11, P12, and so on. P14. And then actually it doesn't go around, go back out. So on P1 is where a lot of the magic happens. P2 and so on is in the end, this is could be display time and so on. Again, I'm not going to go through the different settings, but P1 is where the magic happens, where you can set up your different riding modes. Now, once you've selected the riding mode that you want to adjust, and in this case, let's just choose the extreme mode, you select that riding mode by pressing M, and it stops blinking. And then, same way as you entered the setting in the first place, you press M twice. That usually goes one level deeper, right? And now you see P1.1 for X, right? So this means it's the first setting of the advanced settings of the X mode. And you can basically go through P1.2, P1.3. And you have here, you have your standard settings, like for instance, speed limit, right? And you're used to that from your regular P settings. You probably have like motor torque front wheel, motor torque rear wheel, and so on. And again, I'm going to refrain going through all of these because in the end you can look these easily up in your manual. But I struggled a little bit to understand the concept of the different levels of the manual. That's why I'm explaining these to you. So just if we go all the way back, and how do you get out of here? Mode twice, one level back, mode twice, oh, one level in, and power, you're out. So let's try this again. Twice mode into the first setting. This is just a regular settings mode that you use from any scooter. But if now I want to select a mode, I press mode once, I can select the mode I want to adjust, select that mode, and then press mode twice again. And there we go, and we can basically adjust each one. I want to adjust this, press mode again, up and down, press mode, you're out, press mode twice, you're out, press power, you're out. Good luck with that. Once you master this display, there is an amazing way to adjust the scooter to your individual needs, and this is one of the powerful things of this scooter. So I invite you to really take the manual, take some time, and really play around with it and set it up to your needs. All right, part of operation as well is riding, and I probably don't need to tell you how to ride a scooter, but just maybe a few tips is number one, you want to try to be very stable on the scooter when you're accelerating. Now, acceleration is very, very smooth, but if you really want to hit it from a traffic light, and instead of, you know, starting slowly like I just showed you, you want to like press it forward. What you want to do is lean forward so you don't fall off the scooter because it is relatively powerful. What you're going to notice as well is if you give it full throttle, the front wheel is going to spin. There's just no way around it, at least in full power mode. Now, if you want to be able to give full throttle, you can obviously regulate down the torque of the front motor to a level where you can give it full throttle and the front wheel doesn't spin, right? And these are all the customizations that I talked about. Now, electric braking is set up to level 1, but as you know from other powerful scooters, it is still relatively powerful, and you want to be sure you are realizing that before you brake. So once you're braking, it's always a good idea to lean back a little bit, and you will notice that even without the physical hydraulic brakes engaging, that especially at higher speeds, the electric brake will kick in and the scooter will slow down relatively quickly. So as with everything on this machine, is start slowly, try it out, get used to the behavior of the machine before you start hitting it and riding it hard. Now, last but not least is safety, and I do want to have a few words on that. Number one, get a helmet, wear a helmet. Scooter goes really, really fast, and a lot of things, even if you are a great rider, you can't really control. Number one, other traffic participants, they don't really know how fast you are. They think you're a little scooter, although it's a relatively big machine, but they may misjudge and they may go into your way. They may not see you because you're smaller. So I would always recommend ride with a light on anyways. Second one, potholes. Now, this is an awesome suspension, but you know, it's pure physics. A really big pothole with these small wheels, and you will go over. So you really want to scan the road far enough ahead of you and ride defensively. I would call myself a relatively experienced scooter rider, but the fastest scooter I've ridden before this one was the Mantis, and usually like between 30 and 35 miles an hour on the top end. Getting on this scooter was quite the different experience. It handles differently, it feels differently than the Mantis, and you know, I was told it's more comparable to a Dualtron, powerful Dualtron lineup. I've never been on one of these, so just very briefly. So just know that even if you are very experienced with other electric scooters, it may just feel a little different in handling. So you really want to start slowly, and you want to kind of feel how the scooter reacts in different situations. Now, one additional thing I wanted to point out to you is what riders call speed wobble, right? And on regular, let's say, operating speeds of 25 to 40 miles an hour, which I think is the sweet spot of riding this thing, you may never really notice. But speed wobble is essentially when your front wheel starts, while riding, wobbling like this, just because of the way the dynamics work on the scooter. Now, I'm no engineer, but you can actually feel it. Even if you go at like 15 miles an hour and you slightly move your fingers like this, you can feel how this can potentially start rolling. There's not really a real warning coming here. The only thing that we've heard is if you go extremely fast, let's say 60 miles an hour, and you're a little bit heavier, and then you start like, take your thumb off the throttle, you may experience a little bit like this as you're coming down. Now, the one thing you don't want to do in that time is panic and start like pulling the handlebar somewhere or something, because you don't want to fall at that speed. Usually what helps is a little bit of braking or a little bit of extra gas, because it basically puts the scooter back stable to where it is. There are some adjustments you can do to counter that depending on your weight and your riding style with the suspension. You want to have a little more preload if you're very heavy, so that the front wheel is not jittery. But this gets a little bit into more of an advanced tutorial than a setup tutorial. So if you are experiencing this and if you want help in how to address this, then don't hesitate to contact us. But the main key here that I want you to take away is this is a powerful machine, and do start slowly. Just because it goes 60 miles an hour doesn't mean you have to ride it constantly at 60 miles an hour. And I think it's a fantastic scooter. It became my favorite. I'm actually taking it to commute here to the office twice a week or so. It's a great fun to ride. So I can only wish you tons of fun on it. Be safe, and remember to always keep it fluid.
Like a free rider, move to the beat like a free rider, and I scoot through the week like a free rider, and I scoot.